Good morning, students. So, now we are with you with second part of benign prostatic hyperplasia, and in the first part we have discussed up to clinical evaluation. Again, for the sake, suppose you have not gone through first part, I will request you to see the first part first and then come to the second part. We will go by a case scenario. The scenario remains the same in the first part. 65-year-old male presenting with thinning of urinary stream, increased night frequency and sense of incomplete evacuation for last 3 years. On PR examination, you find the firm, smooth, non-tender prostate with mobile rectal mucosa over it, and the upper limit is not, you are not able to reach. Now, what is the probable diagnosis that we have understood? It is a benign prostatic hyperplasia, because there is enlargement of the prostate, as well as there is a bladder outlet obstruction, as well as there is lower urinary tract symptoms. How you will investigate, we will cover in this lecture, and how you will treat the medical part, again we will cover in this lecture. So, we have the green part, as you can see, we have already covered in the part 1. Today, we will be taking up the complication due to BPH, investigations and treatment, and in treatment I will limit to medical part only, Now, if you look upon the complications because of the BPH, if it is left untreated, the patient may be having urinary retention, and that retention could be acute or chronic. In the acute is painful, the chronic is painless. Acute, patient tells you, chronic you detect. In fact, in the chronic retention, patient says, Dr. Sahab, मुझे को बार बार पेशाब हो रही है, and you examine and find that yes, patient is having bladder lump, and because of the overflow, patient is having that frequency or the overflow incontinence. Then, because of the retained urine, patient can have the recurrent UTI infection. Patient may have gross hematuria. Because of the UTI, there is a damage to the epithelium. Patient may have gross hematuria, or even the prostate may bleed and may lead to gross hematuria. Because of the retained urine, there is a crystallization, formation of the calculus. That calculus is usually in the bladder, but of course, in the chronic retention or the chronic time, it can happen in the kidney also, and there could be back pressure changes, as I told you, it could be hydroureter, or it could be hydronephrosis, or in the chronic renal failure, ultimately leading to uremia. These are the complications of the BPH if it is left untreated. You can see in this diagram, this is a diagrammatic representation, whatever I have discussed with you, right from recurrent hematuria through urethra. You can see the bladder stone, UTI, retention, hydroureter and renal failure. Now, what investigations should you do for BPH? So, first of all, you need to do urine analysis. That should be routine, as well as a culture sensitivity to see whether there is an infection in the urine or not, and accordingly you will give antibiotic. Then you need to know about the kidney function test, and you will do the blood urea nitrogen, serum urea, serum creatinine, serum electrolytes, and you will also look for the PSA, prostate specific antigen, and that is also normally increased to certain level in BPH, but if it is more increased, it signifies the malignancy also, or the metastasis also. But yes, in the BPH, suppose the prostatic the PSA also increases in infection, UTI. So, that you should keep in mind. It is not that if PSA is increased, it is cancer. PSA increases in BPH, as well as PSA increases in UTI also. Normally, it is less than 4 nanogram per ml. Then you need to do imaging, and imaging is ultrasound. Ultrasound, the abdomen of the ultrasound you will do. In the abdomen, you will look for the kidney, ureter, bladder and all. And in the abdominal ultrasound also, through abdomen you can see the prostate, the prostatic volume, the prostatic capsule, the post-void residual urine, everything you will see through abdomen. And suppose you have got some suspected nodule or the capsule you found that it is breached, then you need to do TRUS, that is the transrectal ultrasound, to confirm about the nodularity of the prostate. Then uroflowmetry for objectively record the urinary flow, and if there is a bladder dysfunction, you need to do urodynamic study. In the urodynamic study, with the help of multiple probes, you come to know about the functions of bladder muscles. Then cystoscopy. Cystoscopy, you have got different indication, I will tell you later. If needed, it is not routinely done, but yes, in certain situations you do cystoscopy first before undergoing treatment, and MRI and CT, they are usually not required for BPH. If you suspect some sort of malignancy, and then of course you may order CT, but otherwise MRI and CT for BPH, they are not required. What you wish to see in ultrasound? In ultrasound, you need to see the volume of prostate. What is the volume? And on whatever is the volume, that is the weight of the prostate. You must have seen the ultrasound report. There they mention about the weight of the prostate, 20 gram, 30 gram, 40 gram, and based on that gram, what is that? They basically measure volume and they convert into the weight, and then based on that weight, up to 20 gram is normal limit. 20 to 30 we say it grade 1, 30 to 40 we say grade 2, 40 to 60 we say grade 3, and above 60 gram we say grade 4. So, that is the grading as per the volume or the weight of the prostate on ultrasound is concerned. Then you look for the homogeneity, whether the prostate is uniformly enlarged or you find some calcification or some nodule, because that is important for us to know before we are going for any treatment. And then you have to see the capsule all round, and whether it is intact or there is some breach. If it is intact, it is well fair enough. It is, if there is a breach, we need to further investigate. And then after you have done the ultrasound, you will ask the patient to micturate, and after again patient comes back and you will measure post void residual urine volume. That will tell you how much urine is retained. Normally, how much urine should be retained? It should be 0 ml, but yes, up to 50 ml is permissible. Suppose any person goes and micturates and comes back, the ultrasound is done and 50 ml of urine, the post void urine is there, then that is permissible, but it is not permissible if it is more than 50 ml. So, you need to know about the post void residual urine through ultrasound. And then of course, the condition of the bladder muscle, if they are hypertrophied or if you are having diverticuli, you can see through ultrasound. You see in this ultrasound, these ultrasound, and as you can see on the left side, the uppermost is almost normal, only grade 1 you can see the prostate is enlarged, but it is not causing much of the problem, and below you see the median lobe is intruding into the bladder. On the left side, the down picture if you see, it is intruding, and on the both side there is a trough formation. So, whenever the patient will micturate this, because of this trough, the complete evacuation is not going to occur. And again you can see on the right side, the upper diagram, the prostate is going into the bladder. You can very well see the prostate is protruding inside the bladder, and you can see the prostatic calcification. This is the TRUS picture, and you can see the prostatic calcification within the prostate. Again, it should alarm you and you should further investigate these patients. Now, uroflowmetry, I have also discussed uroflowmetry in the stricture urethra lecture also. Here you should know there is a transducer, there is a instrument, in which instrument you can see in the middle the patient micturates, passes urine, and there is a pressure transducer that has got recording just like ECG. And through that recording you come to know what is the flow rate, what is the peak flow rate, and what is the average flow rate. You calculate the amount of urine which is passed and then the time taken. You divide it and then you come to know what should be what is the average flow rate per second. So, normally this uroflowmetry is objective recording of the urinary flow, and it should be done when there is a more than 150 ml of urine within the bladder, but it should not be more than 250. On the left side you can see this is a normal uroflogram, where you can see the patient passes urine in one go, there is a peak flow, and on the right side you can see the patient passes the thinning of stream. It takes more time, and this is how the uroflowmetry tells you whether we are having bladder outlet obstruction or not. Peak flow rate is normally 15 to 20 ml per second. The average flow rate, as I told you, the total volume passed upon the number of seconds taken to pass the amount of urine, tells you the average flow rate, and that is 12 ml per second. But yes, if it is 7 ml per second, that defines that there is a definite obstruction. I was talking about the cystoscopy, the investigation. Normally, you do not do cystoscopy in all the patients. But yes, if there is evidence of microscopic or the gross hematuria, you do cystoscopy to exclude any calculus or any tumor which can be concomitant, which can be present simultaneously. Then if at all, because of the previous history of instrumentation or trauma or urethral discharge, if you suspect a stricture, then again you need to do cystoscopy before you undertake the patient for surgery. And that is how you do cystoscopy. You can see on the right side lower, right? On the you can see the lobes of the prostate both the side, and in the middle you can see the verumontanum, the shivling ke aakar ka dikh raha hai, that is verumontanum. Now we come to about the treatment. After you have investigated, now you need to know what should be the treatment. The treatment options, number one is watchful waiting, that means you do nothing but active watching. You do not give any treatment, but you actively follow the patient up. That is what is known as watchful waiting. Then there are medical treatments, and the medical treatments, as I told you, the alpha blockers will be there, the 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. You have seen that the testosterone gets converted into dihydrotestosterone in presence of 5-alpha reductase. If you inhibit that enzyme, then the dihydrotestosterone will not be produced, and there will be shrinking of the prostatic tissue. So, that is what is the 5-alpha reductase. And the alpha blockers, what they will do? They will relax the muscles, the tone, and therefore, they may increase the flow of the urine. Then certain phytotherapeutic agents, they have also been worked upon, and in the USA also they have just experimented few of the drugs, I will tell you later on. And then the surgical treatment is the gold standard still is TURP, that is a transurethral resection of the prostate. Whether you are using electrosurgery or the laser, that is up to you. Then the open prostatectomy is sometimes needed, but if you do through the retropubic route, it is Millin's prostatectomy. If you do through transvesical route, it is the Freyr's prostatectomy. And then there are certain minimally invasive treatment available. We will take up one by one. Just for the sake of your knowledge, because this will not be taking in the second part, we will be taking all these treatment in the third part. But yes, you should know the name, the TUIP, that is a transurethral incision of the prostate. Then there are certain heat induced therapy, the TUMT, transurethral microwave thermotherapy, TUVP, transurethral vaporization of prostate, TUNA, transurethral needle ablation, laser therapy, again that can be TULIP, that is transurethral laser induced prostatectomy, or VLAP, visual laser ablation of the prostate, or ILT, the interstitial laser treatment. So, all these are laser therapy. Then HIFU, high intensity focused ultrasound done through transrectal route, and then the water induced thermotherapy. These are the therapy which produce heat, and so that the prostate size shrinks. Mechanical procedures, sometimes they are done, of course they are not very popular, but for the sake of knowledge you should know the TUBD, that is the transurethral balloon dilatation, and then the prostatic stents. So, these are the modalities for minimal invasive treatment of BPH. Now, where to do what? Once the patient is having mild symptom, bother score is not too much, mild symptom means 0 to 7 AUA or IPSS score. Then you will have watchful waiting. You will call the patient up, you will be in contact with the patient, you will keep on observing or keep on investigating, say, look about the back pressure, look about the infection, recurrent stone, and all these things you have to, that is what is known as watchful waiting. You will not give any drug, because the spontaneous remission occurs usually in 1/3 of the population. So, that is there with mild symptom, but if the patient has got moderate or severe symptom, then you need to intervene either through medical therapy or through surgical therapy. Here we will be covering the medical therapy. Before we talk further, you see this diagram very carefully. In this diagram, the violet portion, the blue portion, here you have got alpha 1A receptor predominance, and while the alpha 1D receptors is the pink one. I must tell you, the alpha blocker, again they are divided into alpha selective or super selective, and it has been seen that it is not alpha 1 only, but it is alpha 1A receptor which is responsible for causing dynamic obstruction. So, that you need to understand, and these alpha 1A receptor, they are predominant in the trigone area, in the prostatic area, in the urethral muscle, and once they are relaxed, patient will be having relief in symptom. So, what are the various medical therapy? The various medical therapy, alpha receptor blocker, because of the alpha receptor there is obstruction, there is a dynamic obstruction, you relax, the urinary passage will relax. Then 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, because the testosterone gets converted into dihydrotestosterone and that leads to cell proliferation. So, therefore, if you block this enzyme, then this proliferation will not occur, and that is what the 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. Then phytotherapeutic agents have also been studied and tried. Certain dietary consideration has been told, and then the modulation of bladder contractility. I told you that because of the prostatic enlargement, there is bladder instability. So, that means bladder will be unstable, either it will have the irritability or the patient will be having hypotonic. So, either the bladder will be hypertonic or bladder will be hypotonic, and based on that symptom you will add that treatment also, as well as the supportive care. Then medical treatment, where it is given. Medical treatment is given in uncomplicated BPH having mild to moderate lower urinary tract symptom. That is the indication of medical treatment. Whatever medical treatment you wish to give, that is this category. And what is the contraindication? The contraindication, whenever you find any complication, the complication which I mentioned earlier, that is the retention of the urine which is occurring recurrently, the bladder calculi, the Graf's hematuria, recurrent UTI, the renal insufficiency, then you will not give medical therapy, because it takes time. By that time patient will have more complication. And then if you have given medical therapy, you are not getting response, as I told you, whenever there is in the part 1 I have told you, whenever there is a fibrous structure, fibrous hyperplasia, this fiber hyperplasia is not going to respond to your medical treatment, whereas the muscular hyperplasia is going to respond alpha blocker, and the epithelial proliferation is going to respond by 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. But if there is no response because of the fibrous hyperplasia, then you need to give for you will go for surgical treatment. Then patient compliance is poor, patient desires not to take medical treatment, yes, you can go for surgical treatment. If there are side effects, suppose patient is taking few drugs, the side effects are patient is already on beta blocker, you are giving alpha blocker, patient is having postural hypotension, syncope, then of course this will not be given. And if the patient is not able to afford the cost, because these drugs, suppose patient purchases, these drugs are costly and patient is not able to afford, because these medicines have to be taken lifelong. It is not that you have given for 3 months and it will again see. So, all these things have to be considered before continuing or prescribing medical treatment. Then I was telling you about the bladder tone, how you can modulate. If the bladder is hyperactive, you will decrease the tone and you will decrease the volume of the prostate. If bladder tone is increased, you will give drugs which decrease the tone, and if the bladder tone is decreased, you will give the drugs which will increase the contractility. And there are so many drugs which are available to increase or decrease the contractility. That is absolutely a separate term, but here you should understand that these drugs are also added along with medical treatment of the prostate. Now the question comes, how these alpha blocker act. As I told you, you have got alpha 1A receptors and they adrenergic blockers. They decrease the smooth muscle tone at the receptor sites, and because of that decreased tone, there is decreased resistance along the bladder neck and the prostate, and that improves the voiding. That is a simple mechanism how these drugs act. And the drugs which are available, there can be non-selective phenoxybenzamine, nowadays not used, selective short acting prazosin and elfujosin. Elfujosin is still in use, prazosin is not used. Selective long acting terazosin and doxazosin, again they are very sparingly used. Now the super selective, causing effect only on the, they are hitting the bullseye, the alpha 1A receptor, that is the tamsulosin and silodosin, they are widely used nowadays as a alpha blocker. If you talk about the drugs, just concentrate on the drugs which are written in the blue, that is the elfujosin. This is 10 milligram given once a day. It usually comes in the sustained release form. Give in the morning, in the same time in the morning. Suppose you are giving today in the morning, tomorrow in the evening, it is not going to work. Patient may have some problems. So the time of that drug should remain same, and same is with the tamsulosin, which is given 0.4 milligram once a day, and the silodosin, which can be given 4 to 8 milligram once a day. The tamsulosin usually takes 24 to 48 hours for effect to come, and the silodosin takes very less time, even the 8 hours, within 8 hours the patient may have symptom improvement. Now, what could be the possible side effects? The possible side effects will depend upon where these alpha receptors are situated. So, alpha receptors, they are situated in the peripheral vascular tree, in the bladder neck and the prostate, the nasal vasculature and CNS. Now, you take one by one. In the peripheral vascular tree, the bladder neck and the nasal vasculature, there is relaxation of the smooth muscle. And what will happen in the peripheral vascular tree? If they are there, they are relaxed, then patient may have postural hypotension. So, that will be one side effect with alpha blocker. Then in the bladder neck and the prostate, it will keep it open, and during ejaculation, normally what happens, the bladder neck closes and the ejaculate or the semen goes in the forward direction. But once the patient is taking alpha blocker, since the bladder neck remains open, the semen comes into the bladder, what is we call as retrograde ejaculation, that is there. So, you should tell all these things to your patient before prescribing the medical treatment. And the nasal vasculature, it is dilates, patient will have nasal stuffiness. डॉक्टर साहब मुझे नाक बंद लगती है जब से दवा ली. So that is the basically side effect. You should tell. And if it is in the CNS, patient may have some dizziness or even the asthenia can occur. So these are the side effects of alpha blockers. With tamsulosin, as I told you, there will be ejaculatory problem and nasal congestion, while with the other alpha blocker. Why? Because tamsulosin is alpha 1A super selective. So it is not very predominant within the blood vessels. So therefore the chances of postural hypotension are very less with tamsulosin. While with the other alpha blockers, there will be orthostatic hypotension, dizziness and tiredness, all will be there. So as of today, the best drug or the with least side effect will be tamsulosin. But there are limitations, and you need to know about the limitations of the alpha blocker. It is not that you will give alpha blocker and patient will be relieved all the time. It does not reduce the prostatic size. So suppose the prostatic size is 40, 50, 60 gram. It is not going to reduce the prostatic size, and it is only symptomatic treatment by removing the dynamic part of the obstruction. And it has been seen that even by giving alpha blockers, the incidence of acute urinary retention is not decreased and BPH related surgery is also not decreased. So, patient suppose needs, he will need surgery later on. Now, we will come to 5 alpha reductase inhibitor. They basically block the enzyme, as I told you, 5 alpha reductase. It has got 2 isoenzyme, isoenzyme 1, isoenzyme 2. The finasteride drug blocks isoenzyme 1 only, 2 only, and leads to its effect, while the dutasteride, the drug which is available, blocks isoenzyme 1 as well as isoenzyme 2 both. So, if you have to choose between two, the dutasteride is a better drug in comparison to finasteride. And how it works? The dose, again the finasteride is 5 milligram once a day, again lifelong, or dutasteride if you are giving, it is 0.5 milligram once a day, and this has to be given for a very long time, maybe lifelong. Here I must tell you, once you are giving these 5 alpha reductase inhibitors, they also decrease the PSA level. So, before starting this, baseline PSA level you should measure. Otherwise, what will happen? Suppose the patient is having some sort of problem which causes raised PSA either due to malignancy or due to infection, you will not be able to know after starting this alpha 5 ARIs. So, baseline PSA has to be known to you. How does it act? I told you in the lecture 1 that whenever there is a epithelial hyperplasia, then 5 alpha reductase inhibitors are going to work, because they block the conversion of T to DHT, testosterone to dihydrotestosterone. So, what leads to low intraprostatic DHT. Whenever the intraprostatic DHT is low, then there will be less proliferation, there will be inhibition of the growth, and in due course of time, as you know, the cell dies in due course of time because of the apoptosis, natural apoptosis, there is involution of BPH. So, that means the new growth of the cells does not occur, and because of the natural apoptosis, the size of the prostate decreases in due course of time, and again there are limitations. Before telling the limitations, I should tell that what are the side effects. This 5 alpha reductase inhibitors, again they are having certain side effects associated. Number 1 is erectile dysfunction. Patient will not have proper erection. So, they will come to you and complain about it, and you should be you should tell all these things beforehand before you start. Decreased libido, they are not having desire to have sex. Then the volume of the ejaculate will be diminished. While in the in the alpha blocker, it was a dry ejaculation, because all the ejaculation went to the bladder, but here the ejaculation will be there, the quantity will be less, and in patients, in male patients, they develop breast tenderness. That is again the side effect of 5 alpha reductase inhibitors. So, that has to be kept in the mind and should be told to patient, and you should be aware of. If any patient comes to you, you have prescribed 5 ARI, patient comes to you that Doctor Sahab, I am having pain in the breast. You should not ignore it. You should tell that this is the side effect. This could be a possible side effect of the drug. It is not that you are going to discontinue the drug, but you need to counsel the patient, and if it is not much, you just tell some symptomatic treatment. Efficacy wise, if you see, the prostatic volume decreases in more than 3 months. Why? Because this is the normal apoptosis time. So, once you have started, do not expect that it is going to work tomorrow or day after, like in the alpha blocker. Here you are taking care of static obstruction, and the full effect you will be able to see after 3 months. Even if prostatic size increases or decreases or not, it reduces the vascularity of the prostate. So, suppose there is a large prostate and you are going to do TUR, you start 5 ARI beforehand, and this will reduce the vascularity of the prostate, and when you will do TUR, the amount of bleeding will be less. In that way the 5-ARI are used even if the patient has to undergo for the TUR. Now again, as we have got the limitations with alpha blocker, we have got limitations with 5-ARIs also. That means that there is a delayed onset, number one, as I told you and you understood that it takes around 3 to 6 months for effect to appear, and then the symptom of the BPH usually sometimes not dependent upon the prostatic size alone. Patient may be having some dynamic factor. The lobe is going inside the bladder causing irritation in the trigone, though the size is less, but it will cause irritation. So, it is not only size dependent. The symptom of prostate is dependent on size as well as on irritative part of the bladder. So, the idea is combine both the treatment, and there are so many trials which have taken place, and they have found that if you combine 5-ARI with alpha blocker, then it is a better choice for larger prostate. Suppose a person is having prostate size 40 or more, you give combination therapy. If patient is having 30 or less, you give just alpha blocker, patient may be relieved. So, that way you have to see whether you need to give only alpha blocker or you have to combine alpha blocker with 5-ARI. That depends upon the size of the prostate also. So, that makes sense to combine alpha blocker with 5-alpha reductase inhibitor if you treat a larger prostate with prostatic symptoms. Now, I was talking about some phytotherapies like saw palmetto, the American dwarf plum, the rye plant and the other phytotherapeutic agents, even the South African star grass. Pumpkin seeds, they all have been studied, but the most studied phytotherapy is saw palmetto berries. Extract of berries they are taken, and the dose is 160 milligram BD. That means you need to give 320 milligram once a day, and again it has got both the effect, the alpha blocker effect as well as the 5-ARI effect. But later in many trials or many studies or many randomized control trial, it has been found that it has only placebo effect. So, the thing is, these phytotherapy still they are not well proven. So, we have to resort either on the alpha blocker or 5-ARI drugs. And as I told you, once you are treating prostate for the dynamic and the static part, then you also should take care of bladder contractility, whether it is decreased or increased. If it is decreased, you have to give some bladder tonic drugs like Urivoid, and if the bladder contractility is increased, you have to sedate the bladder by giving some bladder sedatives. There are so many drugs available. You can give solifenacin is a drug. So, and the supportive treatment, you need to regulate the water intake. You will ask suppose the patient is having a lot of nocturia, you ask the patient to stop taking water after say 8 p.m. in the night. So, patient will have less nocturia problem. Then of course, the constipation if patient is having, it will cause pressure over the bladder or the urethra, and you will treat constipation. Many patients they are relieved by treating constipation, and you have to give anxiolytic to the patient and reassurance, because if there is anxiety, then patient will have contraction of the bladder. So, all these supportive treatment are also needed. So, again now I will ask you about these questions. Options for medical therapy, you have to just recapitulate what are the options of the medical therapy. Options of the medical therapy are 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, which reduce the size of the prostate by reducing the epithelial growth, and then alpha blocker, alpha 1A super selective blocker, they take part of the dynamic component of obstruction. Then what is the mechanism? I told you it will relax, it will block the alpha blocker, will relax the prostatic muscle, the bladder muscle, the urethral muscle, and the voiding will be improved. Mechanism of 5-ARI, testosterone to dihydrotestosterone is blocked by this enzyme, by blocking this enzyme. Less of the intraprostatic DST and less of the prostatic cell proliferation. The side effect of the medical treatment, as you have, as I told you, you should recapitulate that with the alpha blocker you can have postural hypotension, dizziness, asthenia, nasal stuffiness, and with of course the 5-ARI and the retrograde ejaculation, and with the 5-ARI you will have decreased libido, or you can have the decreased amount of ejaculate, or even you can have erectile dysfunction. All these things are a contraindication to medical treatment. Whatever complications, suppose whatever complications are mentioned in the BPH, they are the contraindications for medical treatment, and you will not give medical treatment if the patient is having retention, episodes of retention urine, recurrent UTI, calculi, renal failure, or back pressure changes in the urinary tract. Thank you very much, and we will take up the surgical part in our part 3. Just wait till then, and I would request all the students to see, watch and share with your medical colleagues all across India, so that they must be benefited by this prostatic lecture. Thank you.